Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a pretty fascinating anatomical mystery. We're going to decode a condition that has literally puzzled and challenged physicians for centuries, looking closely at how the body manages its most intricate fluid systems and what happens when those systems fail. We're decoding the science, the symptoms, and the surgical solutions surrounding scrotal swellings, specifically focusing on the hydrocele.
Think of this condition almost like a plumbing issue. Picture a biological sink where the faucet is running just a little too fast, or maybe the drain is completely clogged up. What actually happens when the body's delicate fluid drainage system malfunctions in one of the most anatomically complex and, let's be real, sensitive areas of the human body? Well, the fluid has to go somewhere, right? The pressure builds, the anatomy expands, and you are left with a swelling that requires some serious clinical investigation to resolve.
Okay, let's dive right into this. A hydrocele is, quite simply, the collection of fluid between the two layers of the tunica vaginalis of the testis. To really wrap our heads around this, just remember that the testicle is essentially enclosed in a double-layered biological envelope. And when the fluid dynamic between these two layers gets thrown out of balance, boom, a hydrocele forms.
So why does this envelope even exist? To get that, we have to rewind all the way back to human fetal development. As the testis descends from the abdomen down into the scrotum, it actually drags a tube of the peritoneal lining along with it. This tube is called the processus vaginalis. Now, normally this tube is supposed to fibrose and obliterate, basically sealing off that connection to the abdominal cavity, leaving behind just a tiny sac wrapped around the testis, which we call the tunica vaginalis. But if that tube fails to close up properly, that sets the perfect anatomical stage for a hydrocele to develop.
Now, you might be wondering, what exactly is inside this swelling? Well, the fluid composition is actually incredibly specific. We're typically looking at an amber-colored liquid with a specific gravity hovering right around 1.022 to 1.024. It's packed with water, salts, albumin, and, fascinatingly enough, fibrinogen. You'll often even find cholesterol and tyrosine crystals floating around in there. But here is a truly wild medical fact. Hydrocele fluid on its own won't clot. No way. But if it comes into contact with blood, say from an injury or needle puncture, that fibrinogen gets activated and it clots firmly. It's literally a passive fluid just sitting there, waiting for a chemical catalyst.
And this fluid dynamic brilliantly illustrates the why behind the whole condition. We can basically divide the causes into two distinct camps: congenital and acquired. Congenital hydroceles, which we often see in infants, happen because of that defective closure of the processus vaginalis we just talked about. The anatomical door to the abdomen was essentially left wide open. Acquired causes, on the flip side, usually show up in older adults. These happen when that door is closed, but the mechanics inside the sac just break down. Either the tunica vaginalis is cranking out way too much fluid, or there's a defective absorption of that fluid, which is often caused by low-grade infections messing with the lymphatic drainage.
In those congenital cases, the mechanics create a totally fascinating clinical phenomenon. Because there is still a tiny, persistent communication with the peritoneal cavity, the fluid actually shifts based on gravity. So when the patient is lying flat, the fluid gradually disappears, draining right back up into the abdomen. But the second they stand up, the fluid pulls right back into the scrotum. And here's the kicker. You can't just empty it by squeezing it with digital pressure. This weird resistance creates what clinicians playfully call an inverted ink bottle effect.
Which brings us to the real diagnostic detective work. Imagine a patient presents with a large, sometimes massive, scrotal swelling. The absolute critical question clinicians have to ask themselves right off the bat is, how do we know this isn't an inguinal hernia? Because remember, a hernia also involves abdominal contents pushing down into the scrotum. But instead of harmless fluid, it could be a strangulated piece of bowel, which is an absolute surgical emergency.
The secret to figuring this out lies in a crucial tactile difference during the physical exam. It's all about finding the upper limit of the swelling. With a hydrocele, because it's a completely self-contained pocket of fluid surrounding the testes, a doctor can physically get above the swelling. They can literally feel the normal thin spermatic cord structures right above the mass at the root of the scrotum. But with a large scrotal hernia, there is no upper limit. That swelling extends continuously back up along the inguinal canal right into the abdominal cavity.
Beyond just getting above the swelling, there are some absolutely brilliant physical exams doctors use right at the bedside. First off, a hydrocele is fluctuant, meaning if you hold the swelling steady with one hand and press perpendicularly with your fingers, you can actually feel the fluid moving around inside. Second, testicular sensation is still present, and it transmits right through the fluid. But the coolest, most visually striking test? Transillumination. If a doctor shines a pen light side to side through the swelling in a dark room, a primary hydrocele will light up brilliantly like a glowing red lantern. That instantly confirms it's filled with clear fluid and not solid tissue like a tumor or a piece of bowel.
So the crucial point here is while transillumination is a classic hallmark sign, there is a fascinating clinical exception to the rule. Long-standing chronic hydroceles might actually be non-transilluminant. Why would that happen? Well, over time, the layers surrounding the fluid, the dartos muscle, the spermatic fascia, and the hydrocele sac itself can become heavily thickened. Or if the fluid gets infected with pus or mixed with chyle or blood, the light simply won't pass through anymore.
Now, we also need to talk about secondary hydroceles. This is where the fluid buildup is just a symptom of a much more insidious underlying disease. The culprits usually fall into three main categories. First up, infections. Think syphilis or filariasis, which is actually a massive issue in tropical regions due to parasite-induced lymphatic blockages, and tuberculosis. In fact, in 30% of cases involving tuberculosis of the epididymis, a secondary hydrocele is going to develop. Then we have injuries, like direct trauma or even a complication following a hernia repair. And finally, and definitely most critically, tumors. A secondary hydrocele can sometimes act as a mask, hiding an underlying testicular malignancy.
If left untreated, the stakes with this condition can escalate pretty quickly. What starts as a simple fluid collection can spiral into a dangerous complication. For instance, the fluid can become infected, turning into a pyocele, which is literally a collection of pus. Yikes. Trauma can cause bleeding into the sac, creating a hematocele. And the persistent heavy pressure of a massive, long-standing hydrocele can eventually lead to the atrophy, or the complete wasting away of the testes itself. In those severe cases, like with pyoceles or hematocele causing testicular destruction, the patient might ultimately need an orchidectomy, which is the surgical removal of the testes entirely. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is, you might be thinking, hey, it's just a fluid bubble, why not just pop it with a needle and drain it out? Well, clinical guidance explicitly warns against that. Aspiration must be avoided as much as possible. Why? Because it doesn't fix the broken plumbing. The fluid is just going to reaccumulate, often within a week. Plus, blindly sticking a needle in there significantly increases the risk of causing a bleed, giving you that hematocele we just talked about, or introducing a nasty infection. Since needles are a no-go, we have to step into the operating room for a definitive fix. Let's walk through the how of this surgical correction. Step 1. The surgeon makes an incision through the skin, the dartos, and the fascia layers. Step 2. They identify the parietal layer of the tunica vaginalis, which pops up as this very distinct bluish sac. Step 3. Instead of just poking it with a regular needle, they use a specialized tool called a trocar and cannula. This lets them safely puncture the sac and evacuate all that amber fluid without spilling a single drop into the surrounding tissues.
Let's move on and see how this builds, because once that fluid is drained, we have to do a final anatomical reconstruction to permanently solve the leak. I mean, what do you do with this empty, stretched-out sac? Well, if the sac is small and thin-walled, the surgeon performs what's called Lord's plication. They use sutures to basically bunch the tunica up into a ruff around the testis, which nicely minimizes any bleeding risks. But if we're dealing with a massive, thick-walled sac, they go for Jabouley's operation. Here, they partially excise that heavy sac, and then, get this, they actually turn the remaining tissue inside out. They evert it right behind the testis. This means the surface that was secreting all that fluid is now permanently exposed to the highly absorbent tissues of the scrotum.
It is just brilliant, permanent biological engineering, which leaves us with a pretty profound thought to wrap up today's explainer. We've seen how a microscopic failure of a peritoneal tube can snowball into massive fluid imbalances, requiring these incredibly elegant structural aversions to fix. So if a seemingly simple fluid leak requires such precise anatomical reconstruction to permanently repair, what other incredible high-stakes engineering secrets does the human body have hiding just beneath the surface? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll see you in the next explainer.